Hey everybody, it's Tyler Willis. I'm here with Naval from AngelList. And AngelList is making a couple of large announcements today. So Naval is going to walk me through some of those announcements, and I'm going to pepper him with additional questions to try and learn more about what makes this stuff so exciting. Naval, thanks for joining us. You've got a presentation going over some of the announcements. Do you want to just start walking through that, and then I'll interrupt with questions as I have them?
Yeah, thank you, Tyler. So we're going to try and keep this fast and punchy so as not to bore everybody. It's our announcements, but we think they're interesting. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Basically, as you know, AngelList has been building out this network of startup people, and we're now at about a little over 3 million user profiles and a couple of 100,000 company profiles, many of which are aspirational and people who want to be in technology, but obviously many of the people who are in technology and moving the ball forward in the tech revolution are on AngelList. And we're proud to announce that we have raised online over $400 million for startups now. That's in addition to all of the introductions that get made and then additional investments get done offline. And we're doing almost 80,000 matches a month. These are mutual matches between people who want to meet each other for recruiting and for jobs.
So what does being a tech network mean? Why do you call yourselves a tech network?
Yeah, so underneath the AngelList jobs product and underneath the AngelList fundraising product is a common network. Now, the network slash community is all in the technology sector. AngelList is very focused. We just want to make sure that all the people who are interested in and building technology are on AngelList and getting fundraising, they're getting jobs, they're getting services, they're getting connections, they're getting mentoring, they're getting advice, they're finding co-founders. They're getting whatever they can get online in a business context out of AngelList. And it's a pretty simple, transparent product that we've tried to build, very self-service. So today we're going to focus on two major announcements, one on the investing side, one on the job side. On the investing side, we're really talking about early returns that we're starting to show from some of the investments. Just by way of background, keep in mind, our thesis has always been that every great investment starts with individuals before it kind of gets into the VC ecosystem and the sphere. Obviously, like Google, Ron Conway was one of the first investors, and not only did Ron help make Google Google, but Google helped make Ron Ron. The same way Peter Thiel was one of the first investors in Facebook before Excel found it, and it helped build the legend of Peter Thiel as much as Peter Thiel helped build Facebook. And so we've taken that model and sort of institutionalized it and scaled it through something called syndicates, which I hope you're familiar with. But if you're not, it's pretty simple and straightforward. If you take an individual angel, and an example here we have is Dr. Jenny Rook, who's very well known in the biosciences field. And if she invests 25K in a company, normally that would be the end of the story. She'd write her 25K check and that would be it. And if she wanted to put in more money or have more incentive or be more influential or help the company with more cash, she'd have to go and become a VC. But in our model, she can put in 25K, and individuals and funds that are backing her can look at her deal memo, and if they like it, they can put in additional money on top. And Jenny would get a carry, which is a percentage of the profits, and AngelList would take a small percentage of the profits as well for facilitating and managing the investment over the 10-year lifetime of that investment. So that's basically how the model works. These are little pop-up one-off venture funds. And we're proud to announce that using these funds, we've gotten over 1,000 of these companies funded just in the last 3 years. We started the whole thing in 2013, and we now have over 200 active syndicates. Average investment is somewhere around $400,000. And the companies that raised the $400 million through our syndicates online investments have gone on to raise almost $3 billion, which gives you some idea of the health of the winners in that cohort. In fact, there's a couple that we've done that have already had exits. These were later stage deals and done in 2014, but there were syndicates into Cruise and Dollar Shave Club. There were actually two into Cruise and one into Dollar Shave Club, which have both already had exits. Now, we have taken our entire class of 2013 companies. We took the full index. We didn't cherry pick anything. And in fact, that's probably not how you would want to invest. In an ideal world, you wouldn't want to just invest in everything on the market. You would want to pick out what you think the winners are. But even that said, let's just take a look at everything that went through the platform in 2013. What we've done is we've sort of marked them to market. And the way we did that was any company that had raised a subsequent venture round, we marked our investment to that new price. Any company that had gone out of business, we wrote to zero. And then companies that were sort of in between that hadn't raised a new venture round, we either left them at the cost at which we invested, or we actually marked them down if we thought they were doing worse. But we never used our judgment to mark them up. So we tried to play a relatively conservative case. Now, obviously, these are all unrealized. This is all paper markups, and you can't spend this money. But it kind of gives you an indication of how well these companies are doing. And the $10.5 million that was invested online by investors in 2013 on the AngelList platform is currently marked at $25.5 million as of the end of 2015. So we're pretty happy about that. That if that materializes, that would turn into an IRR of 46% after fees and carry. And keep in mind, our model has no management fees to date. It's carry only, but there are some expenses and operating costs associated with running the funds. Now, 46% is a pretty insane IRR. That's not something you want to expect or promise for the future. Even Warren Buffett, comes in somewhere in the high 20s or low 30s over his lifetime career. But it sort of gives you an idea that, okay, these are blue chip angel investments. These are reasonable quality. This is the sort of same access that Silicon Valley insiders have.
So you have 46% unrealized IRR, which puts you really soundly in the upper quartile of private equity and venture capital returns. Why is this vintage performing so well compared to those benchmarks?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. One is 20 companies that got funded in 2013 got marked up in 2015, and 2015 was a good year for markups. So, there might be some exaggeration there, frankly. Secondly, these are very early stage deals, and an early stage actually generally has higher returns than later stage. It's just harder to get into because if you take $1 million and try and put into early stage and you want to build a diversified portfolio, there's a lot of work involved in tracking down 20 small investments and splitting that across. Whereas if you're trying to put $1 million into a later stage company, one investment chews all that up. So because there's more work involved, the returns are higher, but you kind of have the problem of how do you make it happen. A third is the earlier you invest, the longer you're illiquid, the more you have to wait. So you essentially get paid a liquidity premium. You also get paid a volatility premium because seed funds, the average decent seed fund in Silicon Valley is going to return around 3x to 5x over 10 years. But there are outliers that will return 1x, and there are outliers that will return 10x. And 1x is a pretty bad return for having sat there for 10 years in a liquid, opaque asset. Inflation's eating you away, opportunity cost is eating you away. 3x is probably the baseline. I think what we're saying with 46% IRR is like, hey, we have great companies in here. We're doing pretty well. You could still not do well, but at least early indications are that we have the quality level that you should expect this to perform like a normal seed fund or better. You should expect, 3x to 5x kind of returns over 10 years, barring a total market collapse, which can always happen. But it could even do better. We could have a fund or two that does better than 5x. So I think some of this is just good selection. Some of this is early stage. Some of this is the illiquidity premium. And frankly, the private markets are very inefficient. The public markets are extremely efficient, where any little bit of yield gets completely arbitraged out of the system by huge amounts of money flowing in. It's just really hard to put money into early stage private markets. And so the markets are still very inefficient. And the evidence of that is go to Sand Hill Road and count the Ferraris and count the Teslas, right? The venture capital community as a whole does extremely well. So to kind of go through those stats, that was 61 startups in 2013. Of those 61 startups, the net multiple is 2.4x net after our carry and fees. 82% of the companies are still active, and they've raised $450 million in follow-on money as of the end of 2015. And some of the big highlights that are emerging that did syndicates in 2013 are Spire, which used to be called NanoSatisfy. They make microsatellites, great company. Ship, which is a kind of a on-demand shipping service. Distill Networks, which did a big follow-on round with Bessemer Venture Partners. MakeSpace, which does storage. Phil's Coffee, of course, the iconic coffee company that started in San Francisco, and Lob. But there are more, so we're just picking out the top 10% of the class so far. That said, the thing about this business that I'm always learning is nobody knows anything. And it can take a decade or more for the returns to really materialize. I ran a fund in 2007. That fund is still waiting for some of its larger exits. And over time, there is a reversion to the mean. seed funds generally follow one of two patterns, either a J curve where you have lots of losses early on and then the winners come in later, or they follow an N curve where you might have some early markups early on. Then there's a slow decline as some companies fail, and then finally your winners come in at the end. But either way, the winners take a long time. They can take up to a decade to materialize. So again, we're not saying that we're going to sustain 46% IRR here for a long period of time. I think it's going to come down. But what we are saying is if you just take a straight index of the deals that got done in the first cohort where we have enough data to take a serious look, you can see that there's reasonable quality companies in here getting funded at reasonable prices.
Yeah, that's a good time to interject and just kind of quickly remind anyone listening that any views about potential future returns of any fund or any position are kind of inherently speculative. You may lose all of your money. You definitely should approach these things with eyes wide open. So please, we have a disclosure slide coming up. Please make sure everyone reads that if you're listening to this.
And we're more details on this data is up at angel.co/returns. By the time this goes live, you should be able to check that page out. Now, for an individual investor, that's great that the market as a whole seems to be generating good returns. But how are you as an individual investor going to pick the winners, especially given that a lot of the syndicates are limited in size in terms of how much money and people they can take in? They are private, and you may not have the judgment to pick good deals. So I still would not advise anybody to just invest in every deal, even on the platform, even though those are curated to some level. You don't want to invest in every deal. So we've created a fund that we call the Access Fund, and we're announcing that it's open, it's publicly open, and anyone who's accredited can come in and invest a minimum of $100,000 into the fund or more. And what that does is it gives you access to all the deals on AngelList, including the private deals. And that's through the fund managers, which are internal to AngelList. But we see every deal. And then we're going to try and pick the top, call it, quarter, third, half deals for you. So in a given year, 500 to 700 deals go through the platform. We'll pick 100 to 200 deals, or if they're even higher quality, we might pick more, or if they're lower quality, we might pick less. But we're going to try and pick the best deals for you that have the best co-investors, the best traction, good prices, and automatically diversify your pool of capital across all of those companies.
And Naval, how do you pick those? How do you go about?
Yeah, so we have a dashboard internally where we get the data on every deal. We have the company's valuation statistics, the traction, the founder data, who else is investing. Sometimes we have the deck. Sometimes we have access to the founder. We talk to the syndicate lead. We have our deal team members get a deal memo. We ask questions back and forth. It's a fairly involved process because we have a lot of online tools and the team is already running these syndicates. We get some leverage out of that. So we use that data to basically make a judgment call at the end of the day. And we take a small piece of the fund and put it into each one. But it's an exercise that I do every day or every other day. I go through deals in the queue.
And the we in that sentence is who? So who are making these decisions?
Yeah, it's an internal team. I'm definitely involved. Our COO, Kevin Laws, is often involved. Parker Thompson, who's a former venture capitalist who works with us, is often involved. Our deal team works on it. We just try and bring all the intelligence to bear. And we're just looking to build a great seed portfolio that has a chance of capturing big outliers. So we'll take flyers, we'll take bets, we'll do crazy things, but we're looking for that big winner. And we'll build a diversified portfolio of 100 to 200 companies. We'll basically do that to try and assemble a big basket. And then when there are clear winners that emerge from that, we'll take the proratas in the rounds. We may also take proratas and clear winners from previous funds that we're running on the AngelList platform. Basically, we'll do everything in our power, all the data that we have, all the knowledge that we have, to try and make money on this thing. And we think for individual investors, this is a great opportunity for a couple of reasons. One is it's the first time you can get access to early stage private startups in a diversified way. I mean, normally you'd have to move to Silicon Valley or New York. You'd have to hang up your shingle as an angel. You'd have to have millions of dollars to invest. You'd have to build a reputation. You'd have to do tons of coffee meetings. And then you'd have to hope that you got into enough deals. And good luck tracking all the paperwork. You need a CFO and a back office and all of that crazy stuff. Now, thanks to the power of the internet and the democratized model that we've set up, you can take 100K, you can put it in this fund, and we'll diversify it for you. And you'll get all online reporting. You'll get your K1 every year consolidated. You get your online tracking of your underlying investments and how they're doing. And very different than normal venture funds. Besides it just being open to you, we're also not charging any extra fees. There's the underlying carry that goes to the syndicate lead and to AngelList, which averages about 20%. But there's no management fees on this. We're not making a living off of running fees on these funds, and it's a very scalable model because as we add more capital to this fund, we can add more syndicate leads. We don't have to just put more money into behind the same lead. So it's not like we're having to go hunt for lower quality deals. We don't want to compromise on that standard. And even 10 million or even 20 million put to work by this fund would be a drop in the bucket. It would be 5 or 10% of the total capital deployed on the platform. So it's not going to move prices.
So this is a tool where basically an individual investor can get access to the kind of thinking behind what you guys are doing and how to make money, how AngelList kind of looks at these different startups, and they can build is this like access to a diversified portfolio? Is this where they can, individual investors not involved in startups can kind of get access to that venture
I think
capital asset class?
it's exactly that. So the way I think about it is we don't want venture to be an old boys club. It already is very much an old boys club because of the geographic and the historical reasons. So we want to open that up, and we did to some extent with syndicates. But even the syndicates get full. By law, they can only have 99 investors into a syndicate, so that limits the number of people. But if they go into a fund, one of these funds only counts as one investor. There's privacy issues. A lot of companies want to keep their information private, so we took the whole platform private by default. So you now have to be a trusted backer that gets accepted by a lead, and that takes time and reputation. So this kind of bypasses all of that. This skips all of that. If you're just looking to allocate a small percentage of your net worth, and angel investing is very illiquid and not transparent. So if you're okay with your money being tied up for 10 years, trying to generate a high return, then this is sort of the right approach for you. I wouldn't recommend anyone put a significant percentage of their net worth into this, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% of your net worth, annualized. So split that, for whatever you want to allocate per year. This is probably a great way to do it. You don't pay management fees. You only pay carry. You have full transparency. You're getting into very, very early stage deals. You're getting in behind blue chip angel investors. And I didn't even mention if you're living in the United States, then a lot of this is actually very tax efficient for you because a lot of these deals qualify for qualified small business stock rules, which make them federal tax free if you've held it for 5 years. So obviously, I can't give tax advice, and you have to consult your own tax lawyer and your attorney. But indications are that a lot of these companies will have exits that are actually free of federal tax for you, which I don't think you can make that argument in any other asset class. So we think it's a very unique opportunity. If the returns continue to materialize as they have in the past, combined with the tax benefits, these are going to be some of the best performing funds that are available to the average accredited investor.
Though, again, a good time to remind everyone that views about potential future returns are speculative. They may end up being worth nothing.
We're not looking to be number one or anything like that. What we're trying to do is create a scalable, democratized asset class where you don't have to wait for a company to go public before you can invest at a $10 billion valuation. You can instead take that same money and spread it across 1,000 companies at a $10 million valuation or a $5 million valuation. So that's kind of the Axis Fund. And if there are larger investors, if people want to put in $500,000 or more, then we even give them white glove service. We'll have an account manager, and they can just email us at invest@angel.co, and we can work with their accountants and their CFOs to get them any kind of custom requirements. But keep in mind, this fund is designed to be very low cost. In the history of venture capital, seed funds are very expensive. My seed fund was a 2.5 and 25, 2.5% management fee every year for 10 years and 25% carry. And there are others out there, they're even 3 and 30s. Even 2 and 20 is considered cheap in this market. So having a zero management fee and then a 20% per deal carry is quite the bargain, assuming that the quality of the deals is good. And we think the quality of the deals is good, and the unrealized 46% IRR in just 2 years, I think, is good evidence that the quality of the deals is good.
So for people that are interested in investing, you've got it sounds like a couple of different classes. So if you're looking to invest 100 to 500K, you can do the Axis Fund. Here's the link to do that. And then for folks that are higher than that, like 500K a year, it sounds like something like that,
Yeah,
You guys will do more white glove service. And then it sounds like there's the big institutionals, the CSCs and
correct.
maiden lanes.
That's right.
What's the difference between the white glove service and the normal access fund?
There's not, I mean, it's basically getting you comfortable with your questions. It's getting you the right kinds of reporting if you need some more detailed reporting.
Okay.
But fundamentally, it's going to be the same deals.
Okay.
Now, a very large investor, someone wants to write individual checks into special companies as well. We can set people up so that they can be in the access fund. And then for deals that are very large or especially interesting, we can also share them under non-disclosure so that the individual can double down into certain categories or certain deals. But we're willing to work with people. And if you're in doubt, you can just email us at invest@angel.co and we'll get right back to you.
Cool. So somebody with slightly more capital to deploy or interested in doing something slightly more custom, just email.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's a bunch of disclosures here, which I do advise you read. I mean, whenever you're dealing with financial information, you don't want to skip it. There's a lot of details out there, and money is a hard thing to make, and it's an easy thing to lose. And we don't want to be responsible for anybody losing money, but of course it happens. So obviously, be very careful, be very risk averse. Be fearful before you're greedy, and just whatever little bit of greed you have left, you can exercise in this domain.
You have a note here that IRR often goes down. Do you expect the IRR to decrease over time on this particular vintage of funds?
Yeah, I'd be shocked if it stayed at 46%. I think it'll come down probably into the teens or 20s or something like that, but it's hard to say exactly where. It could stay in the 30s if we're really lucky, and if we find an Uber in here, or 40, or around 40. But those are really rare. I don't want to call this an outlier fund. And just as a little thought experiment, we actually took our, there's a power law distribution on these things, so the big winners are much bigger than the next ones, and so on. The rule of thumb in a seed portfolio is that your number one returner returns as much as numbers 2 through n put together, so all the rest put together. And number 2 returns as much as 3 through n put together. And number 3 returns 4 through n put together, and so on. So the power law distribution basically means that the returns are very, very skewed towards the big winners. So if you go to any VC and you say, hey, let's remove the winner from your portfolio, how are you doing? They'll scream bloody murder. They'll say, you can't do that. The whole point is I'm hunting for the one winner. And that's something that's hard for traditional investors to understand, who are used to, in a basket, most things go up and a few things go down. They don't expect everything to go down except one or two, which then go way, way up. But for example, if you were in Uber's seed round, and Uber was on AngelList in August 2010, for its seed round, you would be looking at a 10,000x unrealized return right now. 10,000. That means you could have made 9,000 investments that lost money and you would still be ahead if you had Uber in your seed portfolio. So just as a sanity check, I went into this data and took our top performer, which for privacy, I won't tell you which company that is, but we just took our top one and I cut it in half. I just said, what if we just assume that it's really only worth half of what the most recent investors say it's worth? What does that do? That brought it down to 30%. And, that's a more reasonable number. I'm happy with that. I'm sure if you eliminated that top performer, you'd be down somewhere around, 18, 20%. That's very believable. In a negative interest rate world, that's still great. Given the tax benefits that you have here with these qualified small business stock investments underlying, that's still great, or even better. But that seems more plausible. So I expect over time this will come down.
Is it fair to think of this as a type of index fund, but for startups?
What we're showing here for 2013 is all of the deals that were on the platform at the time. And that's a straight index. But going forward, I would not encourage anybody to do a straight index because we just have too many deals. We have 600 deals a year getting funded on the platform on that order, maybe 500 or 400 or maybe 700, 800, depending on the year. But it's such a large set, and you're not going to get access to all of them because some of them are private, some of them have very high minimums, many of them are full. So the access fund is the way to get access to all those deals. And then we would pick the top 100 or 200 or 300. So call that it's more like it's an index, but it's a curated index. It's an index where we're eliminating things that don't have strong signals or strong reasons to pull in outside investors.
Got it.
So we're really trying to pick the best of the best. While still being mindful that in this industry, you can't just go for these so-called hot or branded deals. You also have to stay open-minded because all the great companies look really weird at first. In fact, if you look at our two biggest winners to date that came out of the 2014 cohort that actually exited, Dollar Shave Club, that's a weird company. If you know that company, that was a guy who went on with a viral online video competing with Gillette. And people who looked at it were like, why is this even a tech company? How does this even qualify? Or Cruise was a ragtag band of bandits, from who came out of Twitch, a video gaming company who decided they're going to build a self-driving car company. Well, what expertise do they have in self-driving cars? These guys were helping kids watch video games earlier. And how is a small startup like that going to compete against the likes of Tesla and GM and Uber and so forth? Yet they had this incredible $1 billion exit in very short order because they built some fundamental core technology that people felt like they had to own. So all the great deals look really weird at first. That's a characteristic that I've just figured out in the business. And so you have to take some outlier bets. You can't just be following the top VCs. Great. So I'm going to go on to the second part of the announcement, which is no less important and interesting, and probably a lot more relevant to most of you who are listening, which is on the job side. This data is hard to track, but we're going to make the bold claim that we're the world's largest marketplace for startup jobs. And it's a very simple, easy to use service. Hopefully you've tried it out. We have an iOS app as well as, of course, it works on the web. But it's kind of like a Tinder for designers, developers, marketers, salespeople. You'll go in there and you'll find tens, I think it's like 20,000 companies total, and you can just swipe through them, look at their profiles, look at their founders, their funding, their traction, why they think they're important, good places to work. They'll put in their salary ranges they're paying, equity that they're giving out. So we try to get them to be as transparent as possible, and you can apply for jobs with a swipe, and hopefully you add some custom note as to why you're really interested in the company. And the company can do likewise with 600,000 candidate profiles now. And it's a free, easy to use service. There's no middlemen, no recruiters. The candidates connect directly with the founders or the CEOs or the VPs and the recruiters that are inside the company, but no third-party recruiter is going to call you or contact you, at least not from us. And you can use it privately. So you can even go on, create a profile. It won't get indexed in the search engines as long as you mark it private. And then only the companies you indicate interest in will see you. So you can swipe past 1,000 companies, pick 5 that you want to apply to, and only those 5 will be aware that you exist as a candidate. And this is a beautiful automated self-service product that we launched a couple of years ago. It's grown like gangbusters on its own. And you can look at the metric stats, but we've got almost 12,000 companies that are active. We've got almost 200,000 candidates that are active right now, and we're making almost 80,000 mutual matches every month, which we're really proud of. And we've done some surveys. We did a survey in the early days that showed a 4% hire rate. And more recently, we've done some tracking through applicant tracking systems and figured out that there's about a 2.5% to 3% higher rate. So even if you take the lower end of that, call it 2.5% of the introductions lead to a hire, to someone actually starting in the job. The offers are higher, but many offers get rejected, obviously. When you take that into account, that means we're putting at least 2,000 people into startups every month. Which is pretty staggering when you think about it, because we started this from the perspective of your investors are supposed to help you find people to hire, and they do that, especially with the C-level candidates. And investors are also very well connected in that they're supposed to help candidates, who they meet with, get into the right companies. But we want to make that systematic. We want to make that open, transparent, easy to use for anybody, whether they're a recent college grad or they've been engineering at Facebook for the last half decade. And we think we've built that system, and it's working. So right now we're putting more people into startups than anyone else on the planet.
I mean, 2,000 people a month seems just crazy high. How does that compare to other kind of normal sources for startup recruiting?
I don't know for sure because nobody really reveals stats, but I would guess that the number one source for startup recruiting is always going to be word of mouth and personal networks. And it's only when people have exhausted that they sort of go to the online sites. Of the online sites, LinkedIn is, I think, mainly used as a lookup service to look up resumes, and even that they're locked down to a great degree. And now we have 3 million profiles, all in the industry, all relatively up to date. with great data around skills and schools and references. So I think we've surpassed LinkedIn at this point, at least for startups and the tech industry. But obviously, LinkedIn is a much bigger beast. And then I think the other sites like Glassdoor and Dice and Career Builder and Indeed, they don't really cater to the tech or startup industry. It's sort of the wrong crowd, wrong people. So I think we're doing really well. I mean, there are also curated hiring services where people will basically do this online recruiting thing, and some of them have more traction than others, but those are still fractionally small compared to us. I would guess we're an order of magnitude larger than even the largest one there. And AngelList Talent is available and works pretty much everywhere in the English-speaking world. I was even surprised a year and a half ago. I did a small trip to Brazil, and I was talking to investors there, and they said, "Oh yeah, our companies are using it," and they pulled it up, and I had no idea, but people use it.
So this is an incredible tool for candidates looking for jobs. How do companies feel about it?
Companies adore it. I mean, you can just go and look at the stuff online. You can search Twitter for what people think of AngelList Talent, but it's probably our most rewarded and used service. So I think people are just thrilled with it.
This is more used than anything else on the site, more used than investing or any of that stuff.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's by volume of traffic and users, it's, 90% is on the recruiting side. Investing is more of a niche product and audience. It's obviously very high impact. People make money, people raise money. It's a lifeblood of a company to get cash. But everybody can use talent. You can see that we have Yelp recruiting, Tinder, Everlane, Chartbeat, Brit & Co, Stripe, Sequoia, the VC firm. A lot of these, didn't raise money on AngelList. They didn't do their seed round or anything like that on AngelList, but they're recruiting on AngelList. So you really get, you get a view into the full startup landscape and what's going on using this.
You said something to me in the past, which is that one of your goals with AngelList was to help companies kind of raise money and find the ideal investors for themselves. It sounds like this is kind of similar experience for candidates of finding the ideal company for them, like going through and being able to like pick out of a list of 1,000.
Yeah, as a candidate, normally you're coming out of school, you're coming out of a job, and you just hear about the 5 companies you've heard of or 10 you've read about in TechCrunch, plus the 5 that your friends know, and you get introduced to those, and that's it. And if you're not in the network, if you're not that connected, if you're coming in from some out of market location, or if you're just graduating, then you've got nothing. My first job out of school, I really wanted to be in technology, and I ended up at the Boston Consulting Group, consulting for back then AT&T and the Baby Bells and so on. But that was not really technology. So I had to quit that job and I had to move out to the West Coast and I had to find startups. And the only startup I found at the time was this one that I got introduced to, and I took a job there. I literally had one job interview and I took the job. So the choices were really, really, really limited for me. And I wasted a year in a management consulting role that was educational, but I would rather just gone to tech straight away. So we're basically now giving people the full wide range of opportunities that are available. And now you don't have to wonder, who are the startups? Where are the startups? Who's hiring? We answer all of that. We can also answer, if you only want to look at the small startups, we can show you those. You only want to look at the startups that are paying above a certain rate, we can show you those. You only want to look at the startups that are in the, in healthcare, we can show you those. So you can slice and dice to your heart's content. We also have groups where you can filter down by startups that are open to co-founders, startups that are open to remote working. That's very popular. Which startups will let you work from wherever you happen to be living rather than force you to move to their headquarters. And that's really easy. I see a lot of sites get popular saying, hey, we show remote jobs, we show remote developer jobs. We have more remote developer jobs than anybody. It's a filter within a much larger pool. So it's not broken out under a separate site name. It's not as sexy. But if you want to find remote jobs, there are tons and tons and tons of them on AngelList.
So if you want to work in startups, this is the place to check out.
This is the place to be if you want to work in startups. There's some new improvements to our talent side. For companies, we've actually added a free, simple, easy-to-use candidate tracking system. For candidates, if you didn't know this, every time you go into a company, you get dumped into this database and you get moved through a pipeline, which could go from phone screen to doing an on-site interview to doing projects to doing reference checks to getting an offer. And traditionally, there are tools that you can buy to use these, but for very small startup companies, they don't have these tools, so they end up using a spreadsheet, which is rather disorganized. So we built the tool we wanted to exist, which is a simple, beautiful, easy to use tool that costs nothing. Yeah, so Track, we have about 700 companies, I believe, using it now, and it's climbing by the month. It was released very recently, if you're a startup or even a tech company, larger tech company, and you're recruiting, try out Track. It's I guarantee you, it's kind of the nicest, simplest UI and front end for a applicant tracking system. And by the way, it handles candidates from outside of AngelList seamlessly. So it's not just for AngelList candidates. You can put in any candidate from anywhere on the web. You can add resumes, and your team is more than welcome to use it. And we're going to be introducing some features in here that I think are pretty killer, that are going to sort of redefine what an applicant tracking system almost is. But in the meantime, have at it and send us feedback. We're constantly improving it. And attached to Track, we even have a bot that can replace your sourcer, that can talk to you in Slack, which is where a lot of people are living these days, frankly. AngelList Talent started out being all about developers and designers, but now you can see that it's also moved into sales, marketing, operations, customer service. So we've added quite a few more roles. So to summarize on jobs, it's automated, it's self-service, it's free, it's easy. Lots of companies are using it. Lots of candidates are loving it. But despite that, we added a premium service. And the premium service that we've been alpha testing for the last few months is called A-List, obviously a play on AngelList and the best of AngelList. And this is really designed for companies that know what they want. They don't have a lot of time. They have serious recruiting budgets and staff, and they just want to get down to the work of hiring great candidates. And so what we do is we pick out the people that we think are the best candidates on AngelList, the top 1%, and we use a combination of algorithms plus manual curation and interviews to determine that. And then we make sure those candidates are active, they're still looking, and we help match them with companies that have joined A-List that are very, very high quality companies with top-notch teams and recruiters. And we work hard to try and match them up. So it's basically a technology-assisted recruiter function. And for a company, the main thing that this does is this saves you time. And for a candidate, what this does is it gets you the highest quality companies bidding on you. They actually send you offers as to what they're willing to pay, and they get more detail in the conversations. You connect in live chats to the VPs and CEOs and the recruiters there, so you can engage in immediate conversations about what's possible. And we make sure the whole thing is very private and curated. You don't have to worry about your current employer finding out if you don't want to.
I'm looking at the top of that slide there, and is there a connection? Is there like a parallel between the select fund and A-List? I mean, you're like same thing, identifying by algorithms and curating by humans.
That's an interesting point, because in the Access Fund, what we're doing is we have 200 syndicate leads out there doing deals. These leads are picking from thousands of companies or tens of thousands of companies. They're doing hundreds of deals on the platform, and then we're cherry picking the top few of those. And what's going on AngelList is we have hundreds of thousands of candidates, and then we're sort of picking out the few hundred or few thousand on top and then making them available within A-List. That said, it's not perfect. I think everyone on AngelList Talent is really good for some kind of job. What we're really trying to do is solve the problem of, if you're Uber or if you're Kickstarter or some fast-growing company that needs to hire a bunch of good people, and they have very specific criteria, and they have a set budget for it and a timeline, that we can engage them with exactly the right kinds of people. In an ideal world, there would be no such thing as a good or a bad candidate. You would be matching everybody into the right company. So as A-List gets better, I can see it being more of solving a matching problem rather than just a filtering and selection problem, if that makes sense. I think on the one place where the analogy breaks down is on the company side. Not every company should be funded. But on the candidate side, everybody who wants to work at a startup should be able to work at a startup. There should be something that they can do that adds value to a startup. But yes, right now we are picking out the so-called top candidates, and we've got people from all the usual logos like Stanford and MIT and Caltech and great companies, ex-Facebook and Google engineers who are on the platform and are looking. And the companies really like it, the companies that are using it.
Naval, I mean, how fast can you hire? So you've got some testimonials here from companies talking a lot about speed, hire in 10 days and the fastest tool at their disposal. How common are those experiences?
Generally, we can get you hires within 2 weeks of when you really seriously engage and go onto the platform. We also work with the candidates to make sure that they respond very quickly within 72 hours. We actually set up a chat interface between you and the company, the candidate and the company, so they can have very quick back and forths. The interface between A-List and AngelList differs a little bit. We rebuilt the AngelList interface from scratch for A-List, and we designed it more for people who are very serious and moving with high speed and are likely to get multiple offers.
I want to go back to a slide that you did there. You kind of breezed over quickly there, which is we help you hire within 2 weeks. Actually, similar question I asked to the fund. Like, who is the we there?
Yeah, so the we in this case, we have an operations team and engineering team that are working hard on this. So we do have account managers, we have ops people. Think of them as technology-enabled recruiters that we have in-house who are working with the candidates and working with the companies. And so they'll talk to the companies if you're having a hard time getting attention, if you're not able to source the people you want, or if you have a custom requirement, you have somebody to talk to who can say, well, change this on your profile, look at these few candidates, wait for the next Monday group that's coming out, and I'm going to find you another 5 out of basic AngelList. I'll source them for you. And so it's a technology-enabled recruiter model for somebody who wants to add people quickly and efficiently and wants precise matches. And we think we've actually priced this pretty well too. It's only if you hire somebody. It's $10,000 only if they stay for at least 3 months. And for engineers or designers in New York and San Francisco, that's a steal. So this is the introductory price. We're probably going to raise it. We always wrestle with how do we price for small startups versus for larger companies. So we have to figure out how to do the proper pricing model there. But right now, we just punted and made it really simple and easy. It's the cheapest one in town. It's the largest candidate pool. It works. There are already hundreds of companies using it. And some of the people who are already using it include like Uber and Ship and Box and Asana and Evernote and Postmates. So the rising stars in the tech industry are using this. And so if you want to get started, if you're a company, you want to get started, you can go to alist.co. For candidates, if you're just on AngelList and participating in the recruiting platform there, we'll reach out to you when you sort of get to a sufficient level of notoriety. So that's it. In summary, on the investing side, we're just showing early results from our 2013 class. And, even though the number says 46% IRR, I'm not promising that to anybody. We're basically just saying these are blue chip angel investments with all the commensurate upsides and risks and democratized with the Access Fund. And then on the job side, we have a premium recruiting service for companies that know exactly what they want to get down to business and start hiring people. So thanks for taking the time.